I just realized that I didn't hit the go live button on the YouTube stream. So we've been going out over the air for the last minute and a half or so. But Jesse, continue. I'm glad that I saw it before we went any further and people started looking, in the YouTube chat going, what is going on here? But Jesse was in the middle of his carry-in day at work today. So I don't know if we need a recap. It's been a busy last couple days here at the old radio ranch. We had both Notre Dame men's basketball and women's basketball yesterday. We had Notre Dame men's basketball earlier today. The Irish men defeated Rutgers out in Las Vegas. We're still waiting to find out the next day and time and opponent, I guess, for that matter, because there are like a million different consolation games in this Players Era tournament that's going on out there. But Notre Dame men did pick up a win today against Rutgers, so that's good news. We've got Notre Dame hockey tomorrow afternoon going on. So there's a chance that we've got hockey and men's basketball head-to-head, and it's happening. It's hopping. It's all over the place.
You were out late last night with the women's game. What time did you finally get home? That game started at 9 p.m., and I saw it was going pretty late.
Yeah, I think I rolled in somewhere around 11:30-ish, something like that. Yeah, not early. Not early.
Love a Monday night game against Central Michigan.
Oh, man, and it was like I think the team knew it was Monday night against Central Michigan. Well, took a little bit for the juices to get flowing and warmed up before they finally put them away last night, but picked up the big dub. 83-51, I think, was the final last night. You ready to roll? You want to talk some football?
I've decided that today is National Get Jeremiyah Love the Heisman Trophy Day.
Let's do it. This is it. This is the final push, right?
This is Irish Breakdown, Sportsbeat, presented by Budweiser's official flag in the ground. We are starting our campaign.
Boom.
For the Jeremiyah Love Heisman.
I feel like we've already started it, and I feel like I've got some good stuff I'm going to come with. I don't know. I guess we'll find out.
I put together a lot of notes today.
Pages of notes.
Sitting on some calls that didn't really need me, so I was in the background just kind of, taking notes, jotting notes. So
feels like maybe you should have whiteboarded that stuff and had it ready to go.
It would have been more of like Venn diagrams and that sort of stuff.
You could do that too. I think, people watching on the YouTube channel like a good visual. I realize radio listeners, podcast listeners don't appreciate the visuals quite as much. But I think anytime you can have either visual or audio aid, that's really all you need. Doesn't it feel like we just kind of woke up the other day and all of a sudden Jeremiyah Love was a Heisman contender, though? Like, didn't this really kind of come out of the blue, like true Heisman, I don't know, contendership, whatever you call it?
Yeah, I would say internally, like, obviously Irish Breakdown, Notre Dame fans, maybe like local, regional media kind of, knew Jeremiyah Love and thought that he belonged on the Heisman stage. But to your point, I feel like it just kind of hit us within the last couple of weeks that the national media, fans, viewership, whatever you want to call it, has now jumped on board. And there feels like a strong push or momentum behind Jeremiyah Love. And I think the group of people listening today, and obviously you and I have been like, well, this is what we've been saying since the beginning of the season. Right. So I do agree with what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, like it really, especially those Heisman odds, because last week we talked about this on yesterday's show. Last week he still had odds like what, plus 3,000 or something like that. And then it jumped all the way up to plus 450. And I think we were talking yesterday, it was 350. It looks like it's kind of settled back around plus 400, 450, but he's got the second best odds from what I've seen, regardless of what the odds are. He's got the second best odds to win the thing right now.
Yeah, I believe right now Mendoza is the favorite. Then it goes Jeremiyah Love and then Julian Sayin after that. And those are the three guys that I think you have to compare him to. And those are the three guys that are based around the Jesse Steyer's analysis today.
The Jesse's. I can't wait till we dig deep into this. Randall McMurphy in the YouTube chat says, I think more people are watching to see if they're any good with all the whining about their ranking. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's just more people are paying attention and they're like, oh, yeah, this Jeremiyah Love is pretty good, by the way.
Yeah,
Feels like.
I think you get a lot of eyes of people kind of hate watching Notre Dame and then realizing they're good and then realizing, oh, why are they good? Oh, because they have Jeremiyah Love and CJ Carr on offense.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly it. Well, after Jeremiyah Love's 8-carry, 171-yard, 3-touchdown performance Saturday, Jeremiyah Love spoke with the media. He was asked to make his own pitch for the Heisman Trophy. Here is what Jeremiyah Love said. What's your pitch for you to win the Heisman?
I'll say I'm a team player. I'm a guy who elevates my team and inspires others to do great things. I'm not an individual by any means. When I step foot on the field, I'm playing for my brothers, and I'm doing everything I can to see them succeed. And that'll probably be my pitch to them. I'm a team player, baby.
Team player, baby. I feel like Jeremiyah Love, I mean, he's obviously very humble. He didn't go overboard praising himself. What did you think about his pitch?
Yeah, his pitch is interesting because the Heisman Trophy is quite literally the most individual award that you can win in all of college football. And he kind of led with, I'm a team player. But I think the reason you want to lead with that and the reason why I appreciate and think it's a good answer is because Jeremiyah Love doesn't have to carry the ball 40 times a game in order for Notre Dame to win. It's not like Ashton Jeanty last season where the entire offense had to funnel through one player. Jeremiyah Love does his part when called upon. If he needs to run the ball, if he needs to catch the ball out of the backfield, depending on matchup, he's going to step up and do his job. And he's also going to, give Jadarian Price, not give Jadarian Price, but allow Jadarian Price to work off of his game, just like he works off of Jadarian Price's game to also get his touches. So the entire offense doesn't have to roll through Jeremiyah Love. He does his job when called upon. I think that's what he was trying to say when he said, I'm a team player.
Yeah, I mean, he's a team player, and like they'll take what they give him as much as possible. I think that has been, kind of a recurring theme in this whole thing. And when you look at the balance of the quarterback and the running back, and look, like you talk about Ashton Jeanty, and I've seen some Boise State fans kind of shouting down Jeremiyah Love. It's like, well, our guy had all these stats last year, and he didn't win it. Well, look, man, Hunter, it turned out, was a generational guy. Like, how are you going to deny a guy who's playing full-time on both sides and putting up all-American numbers on both sides of the ball? Like, he was a unicorn, and that's why Hunter won the Heisman Trophy over Jeanty last year. I felt like Ashton Jeanty was very deserving of the Heisman last year, but part of whether or not you win is also how many other legitimate candidates they are and how many end up there by default. And
yeah,
that's
I
why
was
it
kind of
tends to go to best quarterback on the best team most of the time.
I was kind of sparring with this national guy on Twitter, or X, whatever you want to call it, and he was trying to make the argument that if Jeremiyah Love is going to win the Heisman, we should be solely focused on what he has done as a running back, not including kind of his catches and production receiving the ball. And I was just like, it's just the most absurd thing because no one cares produce all production. Whether you're running the ball, whether you're catching the ball. And then he was trying to say that Ashton Jeanty, didn't win it last year. So why should Jeremiyah Love win it this year? And it's like, well, that's a completely different pool of players.
Right.
If you put Ashton Jeanty in this pool of players, I bet Jeanty would have won the Heisman this season over Jeremiyah Love.
Especially if Boise State was as good as what Boise State was last year with him. Like if Boise State has the record they have this year. And that's the other side of this. It's not like Jeremiyah Love is just playing for a dog team. He's playing for a team that is in the hunt to be in the playoff and should be in the playoff. And, after going to the national championship game last year, for goodness sake.
Right. And so it's just, you have to focus on the pool of players this season, I guess is what I'm getting at. And you have to figure out how to, when you're comparing, it's hard. And I think that's why you give it to a quarterback a lot of recent is it's hard to compare quarterback numbers to running back numbers because they're just simply different positions. So how are you evaluating production in a quarterback versus a production in a running back? That's a tough thing to do. But I think that Jeremiyah Love has the most production and that game-changing type of play where you don't know where he can touch the ball and change a game completely.
And that's exactly it. It's the game-changing type of play, because typically for a non-quarterback, like going back to what whoever this was that you were sparring with about, well, he should only be judged for running the football. Well, Reggie Bush wasn't judged for just running the football. He was also a great receiver. He was great in space, and he made electrifying, game-changing plays. And this is what I said all along, all summer, as we were talking about whether or not Love could end up being some kind of Heisman candidate, like to what degree could he become a legitimate candidate, is that he needed these highlight type plays. And look what he did last week, with the 2 long touchdown runs. Look what he did the week before against Pittsburgh with the long touchdown run. Look what he did against Boston College with the 90-yard touchdown run. He's the only guy in the nation with 2 90-plus yard touchdown runs this season. But like the other thing is, like, Charles Woodson and Desmond Howard, just to name a couple guys off the top of my head who are non-quarterbacks and obviously non-running backs as well. And Tim Brown, you can throw Tim Brown into the same category. All 3 of those guys didn't win the Heisman just because of the one position they played. Woodson was obviously primarily a defensive player, but he was also a punt returner, kick returner. Like, that was part of his game. Same with Desmond Howard. Same with Tim Brown. The return game was part of their game. And that actually hurts Jeremiyah Love. Like, it's great for Jadarian Price because that's one of Jadarian Price's key contributions to this team. And deservedly so. Jadarian Price was named a finalist for, I think it's the Jet Award that goes to the best return man. He's up for that. But it kind of works against Jeremiyah Love. Like, if Jeremiyah Love was also back there returning kicks and he had the opportunity to do that, I would bet that he would have also have returned at least one for a touchdown at some point this season. And, like, to add to that highlight reel, he needed highlight reel type stuff to make him a contender, and that's what he's starting to get. He is stacking up highlight after highlight, and he's just becoming too hard to deny at this point.
Completely agreed.
So what is, I don't know, maybe you've already answered it. Like, what is your best argument for Jeremiyah Love to win the Heisman at this point?
Yeah, I think I might have spoke there a little prematurely when I said,
smoked it.
My biggest argument is what we were just talking about, the big playability. The no one else in football can take the ball from the 2-yard line and house it 98 yards out, like he did against IU in a playoff game last year, like he did against Boston College this season, like he did against Pitt on his first touch of the game, like he did against Syracuse on his first touch of the game. And then against Navy, when you think you have him down and he finds a way to stay up and then he houses it after that for 50 or 60 yards. No one else in college football, and I've seen this comparison, and hopefully this doesn't make people mad, he's the most Reggie Bush player I've seen probably since Reggie Bush, where you just don't know if he catches the ball or if he's running the ball. He shakes one defender and he's off. And the other thing I heard, and I can't remember if I was listening to Gruden, because Gruden went to the Pitt and Notre Dame game and then did like a recap show afterwards. Once he's gone, his straight line speed, you're not catching him.
No one's catching him.
You're not catching him.
Yeah.
And so just to have that ability to, and he's got the full arsenal.
And his acceleration from 0 to 60, like, it's like that. Like, he goes, from that cut, he gets to that straight line speed and he is up to full speed while everyone else, is still finding their gears and trying to even get close to getting in sprinting speed to try to be able to keep up with him.
Right. And so I just don't think that there's anyone else in college football that has that boom ability like Jeremiyah Love. He can touch the ball and it could be a house call from anywhere on the field. Anywhere. I don't think the rest of the quarterbacks can do that. I think Julian Sayon plays with really good 2 NFL wide receivers. He has one of the best defenses in the country to back him up. And we'll get into this too. His schedule has been very favorable. Ohio State has not been tested this season.
Well, and look, that's one of the biggest knocks on Love for this whole thing. Just like with Notre Dame, who have they played? He's doing it against this, and we'll get into that in a minute. But I mean, just like to rattle through the resume here real quick. He is second in the FBS total touchdowns right now. A player from North Texas is the leader. So again, like, Love is doing it against Power 4 competition, where the North Texas guy is obviously doing it against Group of 5 competition. He's the third player since 1996 with 3 touchdowns and 170 rushing yards on 8 or fewer carries. Of course, that's the Syracuse game. And then he ranks 4th in the nation in yards per carry, 3rd in yards per game rushing, 2nd in total points scored. And that's pretty significant. Again, it's the North Texas running back who is at the top. So, like, in terms of Power 4 players, Jeremiyah Love is the number 1 player in the nation in points scored this year. And he's also number 4 in all-purpose yards. And there are 2 Group of 5 players in front of him in all-purpose yards. And then the Nebraska running back is ahead of him as well. So he is essentially second among FBS players in terms of all-purpose yards when you weed out the Group of 5 type guys. So, I mean, like, it is hard to deny what he is doing right now. And, you know, again, like when you add in the splash plays, the highlight plays, it's even harder to deny him, I think. All right, Jesse is shaking his head. We've got some more comments from Jeremiyah Love on the Heisman, his Heisman pose. We've got some comments from Marcus Freeman coming up in a little bit as well. ESPN also broke down the top candidates for the Heisman Trophy. We'll tell you what ESPN had to say about that, and this is where I'm going to have my biggest rebuttal, I think, is with what ESPN said. Not that they were just like blatantly negative, but there's something specific that I think needs to be rebutted with what they're talking about. And there is a Heisman vote. Like if you Google Heisman vote, there is a fan ballot that factors into this as well, as Mr. Poli is indicating. Jesse?
I'm glad you brought up that ESPN.com article because that's what pissed me off this afternoon. That's what made me get out the notebook,
Got you
get out the
working.
pen and paper, and
Cranking.
it was just, let's just say this, lazy is what that ESPN.com breakdown was.
Exactly. It is. We're going to get into that coming up next. Jeremiyah Love for Heisman. He the countdown is on right now. One more game to go. Stanford, Saturday night, 10:30 Eastern time on the West Coast against the Stanford Cardinal. You'll hear it here on Sports Radio WSBT. Our game day show is from 6 to 9:30 Eastern time. Tim, Jim, Eric, and Tyler will all be here nice and late from 6 to 9:30 Saturday. Jimmy Clausen, John Carney, Corey Minor are the guests on the game day show here on Sports Radio WSBT 6 to 9:30. More Jeremiyah Love Heisman talk coming up next. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com with Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers. If you're watching on the YouTube, I put up the link for the website for the Heisman fan vote in there. It's an easy website to remember. It's HeismanFanVote.com, but I put up the link in the YouTube chat if you want to go there and vote for Jeremiyah Love because it does factor in. So we've been talking about Jeremiyah Love's Heisman candidacy, and ESPN broke down the top candidates for the Heisman. So they had little write-ups for each of them. Here's what ESPN.com said about Jeremiyah Love, part of what they said. Love is having a great season, of course. He's explosive, efficient, and clearly the engine of Notre Dame's offense right now. Zoom in, and you'll see it's a soft resume. His best stretch has come against Pitt, Boston College, and Syracuse. The latter two are a combined 4-18. The numbers count, but voters notice who you dominated against, not just the box score. That is from ESPN.com. Jesse, you've got page after page of notes. Go after it. Rip it.
Yeah, so let's jump in here. So I think there's two big things that you have to take a look at when kind of comparing Heisman numbers, between quarterback, running back positions, and then also, my biggest argument with this quote from the ESPN.com article that you just read is the part about a soft resume and voters notice who you dominated against, not just the box score. And I completely agree with that. Not the soft resume part, but the voters notice who you dominated against. So the soft resume, like the one thing we can all agree upon when looking at these three candidates is they all dominated against the bad teams.
Well, I mean, Notre Dame didn't play Old Dominion, Kennesaw State, Indiana State.
Yeah. So you're beating me to my punch here.
Sorry. Didn't mean to steal your thunder. Go ahead.
So, that's the first thing is, let's look at overall schedule and let's look at who you went up against in your toughest matchups. And so I looked at the three toughest matchups from Ohio State, Indiana, and Notre Dame and how the respective players did in those matchups, right? Let's look at the schedule of Ohio State to start. Your record of their opponents is 62-59, and that includes 7-4 Grambling and 7-4 Ohio from the MAC. Ohio State has played 5 bowl-eligible teams. Now let's move over to IU. IU has also opponent combined record of 62-59 right now, but that includes Indiana State, Old Dominion, and Kennesaw. You take out Old Dominion and Kennesaw, IU's record opponent 46-53, a losing record without Old Dominion and Kennesaw. They also have played 5 bowl-eligible teams. 2 of those are Old Dominion and Kennesaw.
Wow.
So they've really played 3 bowl-eligible Power 4 teams. Mm-hmm. That's IU's schedule. Now, let's go over and look at Notre Dame. 7 bowl-eligible teams, a combined record opponent of 65-56. Notre Dame has played 2 SEC, 2 Big Ten, 2 Group of 5, 5 ACC. Ohio State has played a FCS, a MAC, 8 Big Ten, 1 SEC. IU has played 8 Big Ten and 3 FBS teams. Indiana State, Old Dominion, and Kennesaw, right? Now let's look at who they've played and their top opponents. So Ohio State's top opponents right now, Texas, Washington, Illinois. Mendoza's top opponents, Illinois, Iowa, Oregon. Notre Dame, Miami, Texas A&M, USC, and Pitt. Which 4 in that group, I would say you probably don't want to play Notre Dame's cluster there.
Well, yeah, and that's, there's everyone's got the cliche, who does Notre Dame play? But, when you look at strength of schedule and strength of record, their schedule obviously stacks up against anybody in the country.
Right, and so Julian Sayon versus Texas, 126 yards and 1 touchdown. Against Washington, 208 yards, 2 touchdowns. Against Illinois, 166 yards, 2 touchdowns. Really not great numbers. Now let's look at Mendoza versus Illinois, 267 yards, 5 touchdowns. They routed Illinois that day. Versus Iowa, 233 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Against Oregon, 215 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, right? Like those are pretty solid numbers. Love against Texas A&M, 147 combined yards, 2 touchdowns. Versus USC, 265 yards, 1 touchdown. Versus Pitt.
You're still on mute.
I think the most important thing to note about Jeremiyah Love, too, he has no fumbles on the season. He has not given the ball away one time as an offensive player. So, I guess that was a lot of information at once, but Notre Dame has played a tougher schedule. Notre Dame has played tougher high-end opponents, and Jeremiyah Love has produced at a higher level against those higher-end opponents.
Well, see, in this, that kind of ties in to my response to this. And again, we're talking about what ESPN.com said. Zoom in, you'll see it's a soft resume. They're talking about his best stretch has come against Pitt, Boston College, and Syracuse. The latter are combined 4-18. We can all agree that Syracuse has a bad defense, right? Like no one is suggesting anything else. But it's not just that Jeremiyah Love had 171 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 8 carries, 21.3 yards per carry against Syracuse. All those things are true. But if you dig deeper, this is the point of what I was talking about yesterday and what I tweeted out is Love also has more rushing yards by himself than 6 other teams have had against Syracuse this season. So it's not just that Jeremiyah Love had a big day against a bad team. It's that an individual, Jeremiyah Love, has had more than 6 different teams have had against that same team. And that includes Miami. It also includes Pittsburgh. It also includes Clemson. And it also includes SMU. He gained more yards by himself than those teams did on basically a third to a fourth of the carries that those teams had as a team against those same teams. Okay, so maybe you're not impressed because it's still Syracuse. Well, Pittsburgh had the number 10 rushing defense in the nation. They've got the number 10 rushing team in the nation right now. They had the number 3 rush defense before Jeremiyah Love played against them a couple of weeks ago when he had 147 yards against them and he averaged 6.4 yards per carry. They were giving up less than 90 yards per game on the ground prior to facing Jeremiyah Love. And Love picked up more than half of that on his touchdown run that went 56 yards alone. And then he finishes with 147 yards against what was then the number 3 rushing team in the nation that day, 147 yards on 23 carries. Even more than that, Jeremiyah Love had more net rushing yards against Pittsburgh than Louisville, Boston College, Stanford, and Syracuse combined. Jeremiyah Love, 147 yards against Pittsburgh. Louisville, Boston College, Stanford, Syracuse did not combine to rush for more yards than Jeremiyah Love had against Pitt. And we're trying to knock the schedule, again, because Notre Dame dismantled Pitt, and so we're going to try to knock Pitt and say that they're not great. Here's another one, though, because, again, USC, okay, not known to have a great run defense, right? Jeremiyah Love, obviously, 224 yards. Oh, by the way, a Notre Dame Stadium record 228 yards and average 9.5 carries, just his rushing yards against USC. You know how many other teams had 200 rushing yards against USC this season? Zero. That's right. Jeremiyah Love, the next best was 188 yards by Nebraska. Jeremiyah Love had 228 by himself. The next best team against USC this year, Nebraska, 188 yards. The next best yards per carry after Love had 9.4 per carry against USC, Iowa, 5.5 yards per carry. So again, it's not just that Jeremiyah Love is putting up these big numbers against whatever level of competition you think he is or isn't playing, but he's still the outlier on just about everyone's schedule this season because he is putting up more yards by himself on fewer carries than teams are putting up against the competition that he's playing. I get it. like whatever Miami fans happen to be listening, we all know Love didn't have a great game against Miami. But as Vince pointed out yesterday, even Derrick Henry, who won the Heisman Trophy 10 years ago, he didn't shred everybody that he played. Everyone has an off game or two. But Jeremiyah Love has picked up steam as the season has gone on.
Yeah, and I mean, that Miami game is such an outlier because the offense just had no idea what they were going to be. There were so many new pieces. Obviously, CJ Carr playing against a really good defense to start the season. And ever since then, Jeremiyah Love has not missed a beat. And I think the most important thing you have to emphasize when talking about Jeremiyah Love is just the efficiency numbers, because what he does with his limited amount of touches is just not comparable to anyone else. Like, they have a legit running back too, and Jeremiyah Love is still in my opinion, the favorite to win the Heisman. Like, imagine if he absorbed all of Jadarian Price's production as well.
Yeah, and like the only game that he didn't average at least 4.1 yards per carry was the Miami game in week 1. Now, again, look, I know it requires nuance for, like how Miami wants to look at that game and, say that, he didn't do anything against him. I mean, the truth is the truth. He didn't do anything against him. But he also, like, Notre Dame basically quit running the ball in the second half. Remember how we were talking about how Jadarian Price and the fumble and he never saw the ball again? And, like, CJ Carr ended up with more carries than Jeremiyah Love or Jadarian Price in that game. It was, I think if they had it to do all over again, it would be a lot different looking game plan, don't you?
Oh, yeah. Completely different game plan. But that's the whole point, is they just didn't have an identity game 1 with how that, that offense needed to mesh together with a lot of new pieces. Again, a lot of new, not a lot of, but new offensive linemen, new quarterback, new wide receivers. There was a lot that needed to come together game 1, snap 1 against a good Miami team.
So Marcus Freeman was asked yesterday about Love's impact, even when he doesn't have the ball in his hands. And here's what Marcus Freeman had to say about that.
Jeremiyah Love, and you say, okay, every time he gets the ball, there's a chance that he can go all the way. And, I mean, yes, he's not going to get the carries that maybe all the other running backs in the country get, but what he does when he does get the carries is his yards per carry is tremendous. Then you see what he does in the pass game, right? And he doesn't always get the ball, but he's a legitimate threat as a running back out of the backfield in the pass game. But the thing I'm most pleased about, which people that watch him probably don't care about, is the way he protects. I mean, the pride he takes in protecting a quarterback. There was times previously in his first or second year that we would say, hey, if it's a passing situation, you might put somebody else in there. But there's never a time where we say, take him off the field. He's that consistent in his play. I really love it. Every time we run the QB power, just watch every time we run a QB power and Jeremiyah Love's in there, what he does to that linebacker or that safety, whoever's filling him. He tries to go punish him. And that's what you respect about him. He's not a guy that just says, when I get the ball, I'm going to go make something happen. Every play he's in there, he's trying to do his job of physicality. And it is, he is a true, complete running back.
Being the lead blocker is not going to get you any extra Heisman votes, but it does help you win football games, and we've seen that on that quarterback power that Marcus Freeman is talking about.
Yeah, we've seen it on the quarterback power, and we've also seen it, like he was talking about, of stepping up in the pocket and knocking guys' heads off, blocking, picking up blitzers to protect CJ Carr in the pocket. It's impressive to watch because really, like he said, in his first 2 years, could you point out some weaknesses in his game? Sure. But now I feel like he is a complete back. He can obviously run the ball inside. He can run the ball outside. He can be a lead blocker. He can pick up blitzers. He can catch the ball in the flat. And I think most importantly, like we saw against Arkansas, and I can't remember if it was against Purdue, he can run a post route on you. He can run a corner route on, like he can run a full arsenal of wide receiver routes and catch the ball. It's not like he's some of these running backs that catch the ball within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, maybe 10 yards max. Like he can run a 15, 20-yard route and still catch the ball.
It was Arkansas, by the way. He had 5 catches for 70 yards against Arkansas. in that game. But, and then like the other thing that Freeman was referencing there is the third down thing. Like he
would come off the field every
he's
third
an every
down.
down back now. Yeah. And this, this is something that we were talking about a lot last year is how are you taking your best player on offense off the field
On the most important down.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a big difference now too, and again, whether it's running the ball or catching the ball, he can do a little bit of both. And, like whoever, you were talking about with the whole, you got to judge him as a running back. I mean, that's an extra skill. And again, going back to Reggie Bush, no one said, well,
No
I
one
don't know.
discriminates against production.
Yeah, that's right. Last time I checked, all that matters is getting it into the end zone. It doesn't matter how you get it into the end zone. It just matters that you get it into the end zone. And right now, Jeremiyah Love is second in the nation in getting
I just
it
couldn't
into the end zone.
believe I read that. I was like, what are you talking about right now? And then I clicked on it. I was like, this guy's got 200,000 followers. Like this, you know what I mean? It's like, what are you even talking about?
Stymie in the YouTube chat wants to know how many touchdowns he scores Saturday night. What's your over under?
2.5.
You're setting it 2, and I'm setting it at 3.5.
Oh wow. You
I'm
think they're gonna give him the good old what comes after the hat trick, the golden sombrero?
I don't think they're just going to feed him, but I do think that very similar, like it's just a matter of time before he cranks one off and he ends up in the end zone. Because let's see, he has 185 carries. He has 26 receptions. So that is 205, 211. So that's 211 total touches. So divide that by 22, math whiz.
You're looking at 10.
Every 10 times he touches the ball?
9.6.
I thought it was a little bit lower than that. But in any case, that is still like odds are if he touches the ball 20 times, he's going to score at least twice. And I think that the tear that he's on right now, that I'm setting it at 3.5. That would be my over under.
The only reason I don't even care about the touches. I think that everyone knows what's going on right now. And you see another, and again, I think Notre Dame needs to obviously take this, one game, one play at a time. Everyone kept referencing Nick Saban. You never look at the scoreboard. You just keep executing play after play. And then, at the end, you kind of see what the score is. I think that's how Notre Dame approaches this game. And I think Marcus Freeman, I think Mike Denbrock, I think everyone at Notre Dame knows that Jeremiyah Love needs to put his stamp on the season. And you're playing it, you can put the stamp and put your thumb on and really press them. And so I think that there's going to be a concerted effort to get Jeremiyah Love around 200 all-purpose yards and 3 touchdowns. And what you have to remember, regardless if Notre Dame makes it to the playoff or doesn't and ends up playing a bowl game, that's still 3 to 4 weeks off. And if it's a bowl game, this very well might be Jeremiyah Love's last collegiate regular, game in general. And so
a bowl game and they missed the playoff is what you're saying.
Yeah, I didn't want to say it out loud, but if that's what happens, like this could be the last you see of Jeremiyah Love, and I think everyone knows that. And so you have to, obviously it's a tough line because of what just happened with KVA, but you got to let him eat and then get him out of there. And I think they're going to let him eat and get a lot of production, knowing what is at stake.
I think they will as well. I think he'll have the first 2 series. They'll let maybe even 3. They'll let Jadarian Price spell him for a series, and then Jeremiyah Love right back on there and see what he can do. And he's been tearing it up.
Like, I'm sorry, Jadarian Price, but if we get inside the 5-yard line, it's Jeremiyah Love 4 straight plays. Like it is what it is.
I mean, it should be anyway. They could be a little bit more creative with how those 3 plays come. But yeah. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll finish up the hour with a couple more comments from Jeremiyah Love. And then we've got rapid fire in hour number 2, some playoff talk, some Miami talk, and some other juicy things coming up in rapid fire in the 6 o'clock hour of the show. Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. winding down the first hour of Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. We've been talking Jeremiyah Love and his Heisman candidacy. He spoke with the media after his big day, 171 yards and 3 touchdowns against Syracuse Saturday. After his last carry, the 68-yard touchdown run, you might remember Jeremiyah Love struck the Heisman pose. He was asked if he knew he was going to hit the pose before he scored the touchdown.
Yeah, I feel like that play was. I feel like that play was worthy of it. The previous 2 touchdowns, I didn't feel like they were good enough for that celebration, but it was already set in my mind I was going to do it. Happened to break a long one, and what better way to celebrate than breaking off for a long one and hitting the little Heisman pose. But yeah, it was predetermined.
Predetermined Heisman pose. I don't have any problems with that. Do you? 68-yarder. I mean, you got to do your thing.
No, zero complaints for this one. It's, a dog's got to do what a dog's got to do. I appreciate that it was so premeditated that he was like, you know what, that run wasn't worthy of the Heisman stamp. I want to do it on something that I feel or deem worthy. So I really liked that aspect of it. If it was on his mind, he knew he wanted to make a big play. He made some big plays, and he's like, you know what? Let me make an even bigger play, and then I'll hit the Heisman.
Do you feel like, as we stand right now, December 13th is when they give out the Heisman Trophy? So we've got about 2.5 weeks before they award the Heisman. Last week, the regular season is this weekend. Obviously, Jeremiyah Love's game, 10:30 Eastern time on ESPN at Stanford. And then, there will be conference championship weekend. The other 2 top, like in terms of the odds right now, are Fernando Mendoza of Indiana, Julian Sayin from Ohio State. Some people have Diego Pavia, the Vanderbilt quarterback. I don't feel like that's going to happen. Honestly, I think Vanderbilt's going to lose to Tennessee this weekend, and I think that's going to take care of, like any last-ditch hopes that Diego Pavia has, unless, he really pulls a rabbit out of his hat. But do you feel like Jeremiyah Love legitimately has a chance right now, or is it still a bit of an uphill climb? Like just getting to New York City is going to be the win for him.
I feel like the uphill climb is complete. I think him and Mendoza are on the same playing field right now. I even think he's surpassed Julian Sayin at this point. I believe that it is between him and Mendoza. I think, to be quite honest with you, I think Jeremiyah Love needs to have another Syracuse, Pitt, USC type game against Stanford to put, it's going to be the last game of the regular season. He's going to be the last Heisman guy to play this Saturday in the regular season. He needs to put his stamp on the season and basically say, all right, check up your ball, Mendoza. Let's see what you can do in the Big Ten championship. Because if Ohio State's defense makes IU look bad and Mendoza has a bad game where they just can't move the ball, that's huge for Jeremiyah Love.
It's definitely, especially from a quarterback perspective, when you have both of those guys potentially playing against each other, if it does end up being Ohio State and Indiana, which as of right now it is, obviously, because Indiana's just going to, like no one's talking about the fact that Mendoza gets to go out there and play Purdue this weekend. Now Ohio State, Michigan, that's another story. But when you've got 2 quarterbacks like that in the same game, that's a really big kind of final statement that one of those guys gets to make, especially since they are quarterbacks. But I just feel like it comes down to Jeremiyah Love hits a couple more of those highlight runs against Stanford, regardless of if it's at 1 a.m, Eastern time, like we've talked about before. Social media is, a huge part of this whole thing now. And if he hits a couple of those, all that stuff's going to be circulating on social media the rest of the weekend. And I feel like that, like that can really vault him up there. And especially, like if he ends up passing Vegas Ferguson in that game, which he's got a much, greater odds to do right now after running for 171 last week. He only needs around, 130 yards to do that, which feels obviously very realistic. Like he could almost do that in a couple of runs. So I feel like it's like him and, like you said, I think that him and Mendoza are the main two guys right now, and I feel like a couple more highlights in Jeremiyah Love's favor, and he might end up being the favorite at this time next week.
I completely agree, and I just it's so exciting, but also a little disappointing because it felt like it took a lot of people a good amount of time to catch on. But I would call his breakout game USC in terms of when everyone else, I think, started to look and say, "Oh, there is Jeremiyah Love." And it's even crazier when you think preseason, because I think preseason he was north of like plus 10,000 odds to win the Heisman.
I know. And I mean, there were points during this season, not that long ago, maybe within the last month, that CJ Carr still had better odds to win the Heisman than Jeremiyah Love. But look at where we are right now. You know, I feel like Jeremiyah Love this year, CJ Carr next year. That'd be a nice little 1-2 back to back. But we'll see what Jeremiyah Love can do as the Irish head out to Stanford, Palo Alto, 10:30 this Saturday night. You'll hear it here on Sports Radio WSBT. And again, the WSBT Game Day show from 6 to 9:30. I think that might be the latest Game Day show that we've had before. So 6 to 9:30 this Saturday night here on Sports Radio WSBT, as well as the Sports Radio WSBT YouTube channel. And you can always go to either the Irish Breakdown or WSBT YouTube channels, and you can watch this show if you'd like, and do it that way. And you can also participate in the live chat. Tomorrow is mailbag day, so if you want to get those questions in, you can get those questions in via that YouTube chat. After a timeout, we come back with rapid fire. We've got college football playoff talk. We've got Miami talk. We've got kicker talk coming up that we didn't get to yesterday. That's coming up, hour 2, rapid fire, Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com. Hour 2 of the show. If you're just tuning in, glad to have you with us here tonight. Sean Stiers, Jesse Stiers, Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat. It is Hour 2, and that can mean only one thing. Are you ready for rapid fire, Jesse? You are muted again.
I cannot wait for rapid fire. I always get so scared that, I'm going to be unmuted during break and people are going to hear me, doing whatever. So I double mute myself and oftentimes forget to unmute one of them. But
It
I
happens.
felt like we staked our claim with the Jeremiyah Love Heisman talk. Now we switch gears and we get into some rapid fire.
We have a lot of other things to talk about in rapid fire. That's right. Starting with this, scale of 1 to 10, what's your confidence Notre Dame's going to move up to number 8 in this week's college football playoff rankings?
0 out of 10. I think the top 10 tonight's show is going to be pointless in my opinion. I think the top 14 really is going to stay the same. I think, Georgia Tech might move around some bit. USC might move around some bit. The only thing I can see happening in the top 10 change-wise is maybe Oregon jumps Ole Miss.
Right. I think that is the only potential movement. There are people talking about, well, Texas Tech needs to move up and all this different stuff. I don't think that is probably going to happen. But I think you're right. I like in terms of the top 10, that's probably the only movement. I think it's going to be fairly chalk compared to last week. The biggest question is going to be where does Alabama go, for example? Are they going to stay right behind Notre Dame? Could they perhaps vault Notre Dame? Does BYU stay there? Utah, does Miami creep up on Notre Dame? Do they gain a spot after sitting back there at number 13 last week? I think that's the biggest question. I completely agree. I think that, there's at least some people holding out a hope that Notre Dame could move up after, that complete dismantling of Syracuse last week. But I just don't think that for the committee, there's quite enough juice in there. So my confidence is like you. It is a 0. I think that they are going to stay right there at number 9. Robin thinks Miami is going to pass up Utah. What do you think? Do you think Miami moves up one more spot? It feels
Utah
like
played that sloppy game against Kansas State in which they probably should have lost.
Barely won. Yeah.
But I don't know. I don't think the committee is into, well, you barely beat a team, so we're going to move someone above you. I don't think that that's not good waters to be treading in my opinion. I think that opens a can that can really hurt you down the road.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're going to talk about Miami here in just a minute. Go ahead.
I think most importantly, though, as a Notre Dame fan, what's going to happen is Pitt is now going to re-enter the top 25.
Good point. Really good point. They should come back in this week, and that definitely helps Notre Dame, and it's also significant because you've got Miami and Pitt playing this weekend, and it's supposed to snow in Pittsburgh, and, of course, they're playing that game in Pittsburgh, so that makes things doubly interesting. But that could also – obviously, if Miami wins that game, that's a little bit extra juice for Miami as well.
Agreed.
So Andre just put up a question in the YouTube chat, but he gave me a question the other day on Twitter, and he says, how would you rank these teams for the college football playoff? What criteria would you use to distinguish all of these really good teams? And I know it's a very hard question because no one really has a definite answer to it. So if you were on the committee, how are you ranking these teams, Jess?
Yeah, I think this is a really tough question. I will answer this because I would give you my top 10 or my top 12, I guess. But I think that obviously I think I like what they do in terms of tiers. I think you have to put teams in tiers, and then you have to evaluate those same teams in those tiers. So, for example, my first tier would be the undefeated teams: Texas A&M, Indiana, and Ohio State. And I would rank those teams 1 through 3. I would have Ohio State 1, Texas A&M 2, and Indiana 3. The only reason I would have Ohio State 1 is because they're the defending national champ and they're undefeated. They've given you no reason to remove them as a number 1 team. If they hadn't won the national championship, I'd have Texas A&M at number 1, but I definitely would have Indiana number 3. So that would be kind of my criteria for the undefeated teams. And I would move into the 1-loss teams. So Georgia, Texas Tech, Ole Miss, Oregon. From there, I would look at, kind of strength of schedule, who you've played. And since you all have 1 loss, who your losses were to, what you looked like in your losses. So I would have Georgia at number 4. I'd have Ole Miss at number 5. And I would have Oregon at 6 and Texas Tech at 7, just because I think Texas Tech plays in the easiest conference of the 3. And so, yeah, that would kind of be the next. And then from there, I would my last tier would obviously be the 2-loss teams, and I would be looking at who you lost to in combination of, who you beat at the same time. And then also, I think the important thing with the 2-loss and 1-loss teams is how are you performing? How have you progressed throughout the year? Are you the same team? Are you significantly different from start to finish? And are you playing your best football right now today? Maybe that was too long of an answer, but that's kind of – I feel like it's a very loaded question.
I'm not going to give my rankings like you did, because I don't really – because really when you're talking about the undefeated teams, they obviously deserve to be kind of in that tier. And I think, like the top of the polls is like I don't have a big problem with how most of the teams in the top 10 are ranked, really with any of the teams in the top 10 are ranked. I think that, like, in terms of criteria, like what Randall is saying here, you evaluate them with everything available: strength of schedule, strength of record, eye test, and also how they're playing, and like that's what I think the committee is doing. And obviously, does head-to-head matter? Yes, but like, so do losses, who you beat and who you lost to. And I realized that, like, if Notre Dame was in the same situation as Miami, and Notre Dame had the head-to-head, and Notre Dame was 4 spots behind Miami, or 5, or whatever it is right now, Notre Dame fans would be mad as well if they had that head-to-head win. But look, head-to-head is not the only thing, especially like this is an age-old idiom when it comes to college football. It is better to lose at the beginning of the season than it is in the middle of the season or at the end of the season. And it also is, I'm sorry, about who you lost to. Who you lost to still matters. And the fact that, okay, yes, Miami has a head-to-head victory over Notre Dame, but they have also lost to 2 unranked teams in their conference. And it has to matter that they're not even in the top 3 in their conference. They're sitting there, in a tie, still trying to work their way into the conversation, into the possibility. They still need help to even get in the conference championship game. So while they have a good win, they also have not 2 bad losses, but they have 2 losses that are not great because they came to unranked teams. That's just the way it is. That's part of the equation as well. But it's also like when you listen, and I realize, look, depending on, where your rooting interest is and what you think of this whole thing, you're going to pick apart what the playoff committee chairman says every week. But they are watching how these teams are playing football, and that has to matter as well. Like how you were playing right now, the way you were going about it. Are you just squeaking by? Because look, Miami, their final score last week says 34-17 over Virginia Tech. Well, Miami threw a touchdown pass with 20 seconds to go in that game to make what was a 10-point game look a little bit more lopsided against Virginia Tech. So, okay, they won. That's still all that matters, but how you were playing matters as well. And Notre Dame right now, in all phases, and as the committee keeps pointing out, they are a completely different team. And we all know, as people who follow Notre Dame is a completely different kind of team right now. How they are playing defense right now, they are not just getting by, they are thriving, and they now have a championship level defense. So you do have to trust your eyes, and you also have to see how they're playing in addition to all this other data, strength of schedule, strength of record, all these different things. These are all different factors and how you were judged. It's not just one or two things. You don't just get to cherry pick what means the most. So I think you have to use the whole body of work and all the different data points that are available to you. And I feel like that's what the committee is doing every week.
Yeah, I do feel like they're doing that, but of course it's so easy for us to say because we're getting, as Notre Dame fans, the outcome that's desirable, right? And so if the roles were reversed and we were on Miami's side, I'm sure we would feel a bit upset. But I think you have to, as best as possible, kind of step out and look at it from everyone is focusing in on this micro. Oh, you played Miami and Notre Dame head to head beginning of the season. Okay, that's a micro look. First game of the season. Brand new quarterback, brand new defense on the road. You have a fifth-year quarterback, a lot of experience along the defensive line. Now let's fast forward to the end of the season. If they played on a neutral field, who would be the favorite right now? I would almost guarantee that it would be Notre Dame. And I think naturally you could say Notre Dame would probably be favorites against all except really Ohio State, in my opinion. I think they would be toss-ups with IU, Texas A&M, Georgia. It would just basically, again, be like, a toss-up. The spread would be within 1.5, 2.5 points. So I think maybe Ohio State is the only team that would be the betting favorite if Notre Dame played on a neutral field. And that should show you how good of a team right now Notre Dame is. Their question marks were at quarterback and defense to begin the season. Those question marks are now exclamation points. CJ Carr is one of the best quarterbacks, and this defense has really turned itself around. I'm not willing to say they're one of the best because I want to see them play against high-end competition again before we make that comparison.
But the way they're playing defense right now, because look,
they lead the nation in turnovers. They lead the nation in pressures on the quarterback. They have, a top corner in the country. They have one of the best safeties in the country. It's just across the defense, they have just continued to rise. It's not theoretical. There are stats out there showing it.
Yes, exactly. And like Pitt's offense was not a bad offense, but Notre Dame shredded them. Notre Dame's defense shredded them. They were a ranked team. All those things are taken into account. And then that same Pittsburgh team turned around last week while Notre Dame was busy scoring 70 points. 21 of it, obviously, combined between the defense and special teams. While Notre Dame was doing that, Pittsburgh went out on the road and beat the team that was in first place in the ACC. So I think that matters as well as this committee. Like Notre Dame beat Pitt handily. Pitt turns around and beats the first place team in the ACC, and meanwhile, Miami's in fifth place in the ACC. Right. Yes, exactly. Pittsburgh beat them handily. So go ahead.
Not to like belabor this point or this question, but do you think it benefits Notre Dame that they played this large ACC schedule and Miami is also in the ACC because it gives you more of comparative data points or common denominators of opponents? Like if Miami was in a completely different conference and they didn't have so many common opponents, I think that this argument would be even harder. But you see Notre Dame playing some of the likes of, these ACC teams and really dismantling them outside of that first game against Miami. And then you look at Miami and it's like, you're not even going to be in the conference championship of a league that Notre Dame has quite literally walked through in the last, however many, 3, 4, 5 years.
Yes. And you lost 2 games in your own conference. It's not like they lost to an SEC team. They lost to 2 teams in their own conference that were below them in the standings and in the national rankings. That has to count for something. That has to matter. And the committee is obviously saying that it does. Let me ask you this, though. Scale of 1 to 10. How much would you like to see a rematch of Notre Dame and Miami in the first round of the playoffs as opposed to any other first-round opponent?
This is tough. I put it at a 5 out of 10 just because if they do get to play them, I think it would be fun to, we could settle this argument once and for all. But at the end, and then also I think it's a game Notre Dame would win. So like I think that they would not only get to prove the haters wrong, but they'd get to move on. But then the other side of me is like, I love when Notre Dame plays different opponents. I love different matchups. I love maybe playing a team that they've never played before, like an Ole Miss or whatever. And I know that matchup might not be more favorable, but that's where the other kind of like 50-50 comes for me personally. Like I like the kind of variety. You've already played Miami once this season. But then comes the aspect of you could dominate them and be like, hey, listen, we've told you that this is what would happen.
This is an 8 for me because I didn't know I could be annoyed by anyone as much as Miami fans annoy me right now. And it is just a constant barrage. Like you could tell a Miami fan, "Hey, I'm going to the grocery store," and they'd say, "What? Notre Dame? What? We should be ranked ahead of Notre Dame." Well, I didn't even mention Notre Dame, and you're coming at me about Notre Dame. Like that's all. Like every little thing, they just keep coming and coming, and and again, head to head is a valid point. If Notre Dame beat them and Miami was ranked ahead of Notre Dame, Irish fans would definitely feel the same way. But it's just so irrational, like the whole. It is, Josh. It has become insufferable. Like everything is just blown up, and that's all these Miami fans, and like they're coming at Notre Dame and Notre Dame fans. It's the college football playoff committee that you should be going after. Like, but like anytime I get on Twitter, like the whole thing just becomes this big Miami conversation. And again, you can't say anything without Miami fans coming at you. And it's just Kevin Clark. You know who Kevin Clark is? He on does a lot of, he's on ESPN now, does a lot of NFL content. He used to be with The Ringer, very knowledgeable NFL guy, hosts, different NFL shows. But I just found out that he's also, oh, by the way, I don't know if he's an alum, but he's definitely a Miami, at the very least, a Miami fan. And he was talking with Ryan Russillo on Russillo's podcast, and they got into the Notre Dame Miami debate. And Kevin Clark, it's like, he's like, well, Miami beat Notre Dame, and Notre Dame says they're a better team now at the start of the year. Well, Miami's a better team now too. This is what Kevin Clark said. And, well, if that's the case, again, how did you lose to 2 unranked teams? And Russillo actually called him out. He's like, Carson Beck is not playing, very, very good right now. He's like, you're trying to tell me that Carson Beck is as good now as he was at the start of the season? I mean, the guy has more interceptions than CJ Carr right now. And this is a 5th-year quarterback, Carson Beck, compared to CJ Carr, obviously, is first season as a starter. And I think the committee is looking at that as well, like the growth of a quarterback who was making his first career start on the road against Miami, which we've talked about. It's like Beck, yeah, he's got a little bit better completion percentage. But again, it's just on. And it's like, like the whole everything with Miami is like, we would kill Notre Dame. We would kill them again. It was a 3-point game that came down to the end because you made, one or two more plays at the end of the game than Notre Dame did. But they act like, they ran Notre Dame off the field that night.
I mean, I would argue that Beck is the reason why they've lost both of those games. He had a lot of late turnovers in both of those games. 6 of his 9
interceptions are in those 2 losses. He had a 4-interception game.
Correct. And one of the interceptions came in the overtime period against one of those teams. So it's just, like CJ Carr has not made a play where it has lost Notre Dame the game. Right. Beck has played horrible in those losses and is not, you can't say he's the root of it because, it's a team game and blah, blah, blah. But like he turned the ball over when it mattered most. And that's what I was getting at.
Yeah. I mean, like, look, we all know the difference in Notre Dame's defense right now. Like were there issues with Notre Dame offensively? Yeah. But I think a lot of that, again, had to do with game plan and how there were a lot of unknowns about how CJ Carr was going to react to some certain things, and they fed him like the high RPO diet. But, like defensively, it's night and day different now. Notre Dame gave up over 30 points a game in those first 3 games. They're giving up less than half of that right now. Like that's a difference. And it's not just who they're playing, it's the style they're playing with, again, as we all know. But again, I think the committee is seeing a lot of those things. Miami fans are completely blind to that because it's all about their blind Notre Dame rage. And they're like, oh, well, we shouldn't go play at Notre Dame next year, if this is the kind of treatment we're going to get. Well, conveniently forgetting about the fact that they bailed on last year's game that was supposed to be at Notre Dame so they could play Florida A&M at home. And again, I've said this before, if that game that Miami canceled last year that was supposed to be here at Notre Dame, if that game would have been scheduled to be played at Miami, there's no way they're canceling that because they would have stood to take in all that gate and everything else. But because it was at Notre Dame, they found a way to wiggle out of them, and the ACC allowed it to happen. So don't tell me about, oh, you don't need Notre Dame and everything else. Like get real. But they don't want to see real. They just want to see their side of the thing.
I think it would be absolutely poetic if Pat Narduzzi can without a doubt seal Notre Dame's fate into the playoffs because of how much he despises them. But
that would be delightful, wouldn't it? If
because he wants to win that game, but the double-edged sword of it, if you win that game,
it helps Notre Dame.
It's almost 100% locked that Notre Dame goes into the playoff no matter
right.
what. But you also get to go to the ACC and can win yourself into the playoff as well. So I mean, it's not what he's thinking about, but it's just so funny to me. A guy that despises and always has Notre Dame on the tongue can quite literally seal their fate right into the playoffs.
Yeah. But again, this is all why I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch. You're right. It's like in college football, you just don't see rematches very often. And a lot of people think it's boring. But in this case, just with all the back and forth that's going on, I would honestly
It'd
just
be blockbuster.
Oh, I know. I would love to see him play again. Just settle it out there on the field once and for all. And we'll find out who's the better team 3 months later. 4 months, I guess, by the time, they would actually play in the playoffs. We'll take a timeout. When we come back, more rapid fire. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com. We continue Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com and Rapid Fire. The 6 o'clock hour of the show, along with Jesse Stiers. I'm Sean Stiers. More college football playoff talk. If you're going to be on the road in the first round, would you rather be the 9 seed or the 10 seed, Jesse?
Oh, I'm 100% going with the 10 seed because the 9 seed means you face Ohio State in the. While we don't know a lot about Ohio State yet, I mean, we know they're a good football team, but Michigan and the Big Ten championship will tell us a lot about Ohio State, in my opinion. But I would rather play. I think in the first round of the team Notre Dame could play, I think they could beat anyone. To be quite honest with you, so I'm looking at second round. I would rather play an Indiana or maybe a Texas A&M again before I would want to play Ohio State. That's at least my rationale.
I completely agree. I would rather be in that 10-7 game than the 8-9 game. You know, for one thing, the 8-9 game means that, you know, theoretically you're a little bit closer. I think if you're Notre Dame, okay, you're the 10 seed versus the 7 seed. It's not that far off. And I'm like you, I would rather, like, people are saying, okay, give me OSU. Well, I want to win the national championship. And I don't
When's the
want
last time Notre Dame beat Ohio State?
Right. Like, yeah, you'd like to beat Ohio State, but wouldn't you rather do it in the national championship game than in the second round? You know, like, I don't think that Ohio State is completely invincible, but as of right now, they're the number 1 seed. And I would rather, like, if Indiana is going to be the 2 seed, you know, again, I think Indiana's good. I think they're better than last year. But, you know, like when you, like, probably in the trenches is where they're best, and at the quarterback position, they're best. Like, Ohio State still has a heck of a lot of skill talent on that field because they do every year, and they've got a pretty good quarterback as well. I would rather take my chances with Indiana in the second round than I would with Ohio State in the second round. So I'd rather be the 10 seed.
A couple people in the chat are saying, wouldn't you want to get to Ohio State early because they'd be coming off, you know, time off, the chemistry, the timing wouldn't be back. If you play them later, obviously they'd be on a little bit of a roll, you know, a little bit. I see that side of it. But I'm like you.
But I think most people are also still looking at the fact that the teams with the buys lost last year. And that was, like, I think that's probably skewing. Like, can you say that the time off had some effect? Probably, but it was also because you had a different seeding system last year. And I think
the automatic top 4s and with conference championships and that it's a different seeding this year. And I feel like last year it was more backloaded because they had to give guaranteed spots to conference championships. Now this year is front loaded because it's just the best teams regardless of you know, conference championship or not. But I don't know. I'm like you. I want to beat Ohio State when it matters most. It would be nice to get them back in the national championship. And maybe that's too forward thinking. But again, I would rather play a lesser team in the second round than Ohio State.
Right.
Personally.
So Indy forever says you beat them, then you get the rest of their seeding, which will be easiest. Well, you still have to beat them. There's no guarantee you're going to beat them. And, you know, again, they're all going to be tough games because these are playoff teams that are undefeated right now and ranked in the top 4. But I would still rather take my chances with Indiana in the second round than Ohio State. When's the last big game that Indiana has won from the coaching staff and the players on down? Compare that to Ohio State. International championship last year. The head coach got the monkey off their back. You can argue, you know, like defensively that they're even better this year with Matt Patricia running the show. I would, you know, and like a guy with Super Bowl experience, I would still rather take my chances with Indiana or even a rematch of Texas A&M in the second round than I would with Ohio State in the second round. Like, that's where I am. So I'd rather be in that 10-7 game than the 8-9. But everyone's got their own perspectives, obviously. All right, so kicking has become more stable over the last several weeks. And I asked Marcus Freeman yesterday about Noah Burnett's injury. Last week, special teams coordinator Marty Biaggi said that Burnett could get back in the mix if he is healthy. So what I asked Freeman yesterday, how similar is Noah Burnett's injury to the one that Mitch Jeter had last year, and how does he want to handle this kicking situation going forward if Burnett is healthy? And here's his response.
It's a different injury. They're both growing hip, lower leg, muscle tears, strains, but it wasn't the same as Mitch's. But that's something we just kind of talked about. Postseason, we got to figure out what's going on. Because the volume, even talking to him, the volume, what we asked him to do here isn't as much as maybe what they've done previously. But we look at all soft tissue injuries and say there's got to be a cause and effect. What's the issue and how do we fix it? And so with Noah, as soon as he gets healthy, which it could be this week, it's to be determined based off today and tomorrow. Once he gets healthy, let's let him kick and let Eric kick, and we'll make a decision by the end of the week on who's doing what, or who's doing all on Saturday. But Noah's got to get healthy first before we can even come to that decision.
So a chance that we could see Noah Burnett. What do you think about all this, Jesse?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of – it's funny because there's a lot of layers to just a question about kickers. And I don't think that's what we anticipated, that there would be probably the most depth on this week after, dominating Syracuse and now looking forward to Stanford. But the first thing is Marcus Freeman acknowledged the cause and effect aspects, which I think is very valuable. He sees a common denominator, or maybe a little bit of a pattern that is forming. And so to kind of tackle that head on and say, this is something we're going to discuss. Maybe we're going to look at different volume, workload, how we're going about it. I respect that, because you can't have these things continue to go on. And then I think the next important aspect is if Noah Burnett can go, what that looks like. Because I think what it should look like is Noah Burnett would handle all of your kickoff, and kickoff duties. But I think you would still want to roll with Schmidt as your actual field goal kicker, because you need to establish some momentum. And I know he has
go the other way around, because they started the season where Schmidt was doing the kickoffs and Burnett was handling all the place kicking. So you would flip it around, because Schmidt has been in there for the last few weeks now.
It's just the most consistent that they've got going on right now. If you throw Burnett back in there, and then potentially it's he's now doing this in high leverage playoff games when he's been out the last 2-3 months. I don't think that could bode well for confidence and momentum, right? I think Schmidt has the most confidence and momentum, and it's not like Burnett was just lights out when he was healthy. That's the other aspect of this thing. The whole entire field goal kicking operation has been shaky this year. But as of recent, Schmidt has been the most consistent. I know he hasn't had to really kick true field goals. It's just been extra points and that sort of stuff. But I think mentally the most confidence Schmidt would have the most right now. And the reason why I would allow Burnett to kind of do some of those kickoff duties is it takes the strain off of Schmidt elsewhere. He could solely focus on being the field goal kicker.
See, I think I'd do it the other way around, though, because Schmidt still has the bigger leg. And I think that with the injury, and he's consistent kicking the ball into the end zone. So with the injury that Burnett has, I don't know if I want him, just rearing back and trying to get it into the end zone. I think it's probably a bigger question mark, whether he can get a touchback with the leg injury that he's got. And Schmidt, the biggest thing with him has always been the consistency. So I don't know. What stinks is you're going into the last game of the regular season. A field goal shouldn't matter either way in a game like this at Stanford, but you would almost kind of like to have a field goal situation just so you can run one of these guys out there and see what he can do, in any kind of pressure situation, because Freeman has said before that the issues that we've seen in the games that have come up have not been issues in practice. So I think I would flip it the other way around. If Burnett is healthy, he's supposed to be the more accurate one. So I think that I would keep Schmidt on kickoff duties, and I would want Burnett handling the place kicking.
At least we agree upon that they would be split. that one of them could take some of the
Yeah.
workload away from the other one. It's so hard because I just wish they had a consistent field goal kicker at this
I
point in
know.
this season. Like this is, and it's something we've like the two biggest deficiencies of Notre Dame right now: field goal kicking, short yardage situations, both of which I thought would be figured out before going into the playoffs and are potentially things that can lose you playoff games. You're talking about leaving a lot of points off the board in close games.
Yeah. I mean, you get into a defensive battle, whether it's Ohio State or Indiana or, whoever it happens to be, you get into a defensive back and forth, and you've got a game similar to Georgia last year and, a game similar to what you had against Penn State. Everything is going to matter, and you've got to have someone who can come in and just be consistent when you are in field goal range. Anything under 40 yards needs to be automatic, but it's been anything but automatic this year. So it's going to be really interesting to see how they get it figured out. I think everyone's ears perked up when they heard Marcus Freeman say you could even see Burnett by this week at Stanford. I think that would actually be a good thing if he is healthy enough to do it. But I also think you don't want to push him back any faster than necessary. All right, we'll take our final timeout. We'll back to wrap things up with a couple more questions. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat, IrishBreakdown.com, and Rapid Fire. We're winding down Budweiser's weekday sports beat with IrishBreakdown.com, along with Jesse Stiers, Sean Stiers. A couple rapid-fire questions left here tonight. Chip Kelly going from UCLA head coach to national championship winning offensive coordinator at Ohio State to fired NFL offensive coordinator by the Las Vegas Raiders in less than 2 years is blank.
It is the unfortunate life cycle of an offensive coordinator. You know, like you do really well. And what's that mean when you do really well? It means other bad teams want you, right? Like you go from the best in college and that gets you an upgrade to the NFL. And in the NFL, likely if an offensive coordinator position is open, it's because that team is doing bad, right? They're not producing enough. So you got to come in and fix all their issues. You got to, deal with the pieces that you're dealt. Geno Smith at quarterback. You get to draft Ashton Genty. You got 2 tight ends and Mayer and Brock Bowers. You got real no wide receiver help because, again, you're the Raiders and you're a bad team. Mm-hmm. And you're expected to fix all the issues. So, again, it's just that unexpected life cycle of being a position coach in the college and NFL. Like you do really well. You get the promotion. And then you do bad, and then you got to kind of, go through that circle of life again.
I think a lot of people thought he was crazy when he left a head coaching position at UCLA to become an offensive coordinator. But obviously it works out pretty well when you can go win a national championship and you've got all this head coaching experience, both obviously, going back to Oregon as well as the Eagles and the 49ers, and, and then it turns him into a hot commodity. He's just never worked out in the NFL because even though he wasn't a head coach, obviously, at this stop, he had other opportunities with both the Eagles and with San Francisco. And the coaches who followed him at both of those stops had a heck of a lot more success than what he had. I kind of agree with what Randall said. Like, Pete Carroll probably should have just hung it up. But, Carroll comes back, and now he's in a situation where he's got to save himself. And so they've got to get rid of Chip Kelly, and we all know like professional football just unforgiving, and like a lot of people thought that Pete Carroll was going to come in, and all of a sudden the Raiders were going to be this contending team. We said all along, like, okay, who's he got at quarterback? Because when they hired him, he didn't even have Geno Smith, and I thought that he'd at least be a little bit better with Geno because they had some success together back in Seattle. The one good thing for Chip Kelly, though, is from what I understand, it sounds like he's got a heck of a safety net because he's guaranteed something like $20 million because this is only year one of his contract. So I think if I'm Chip Kelly, I might just say, look, let's ride off into the sunset. Maybe I go be a TV analyst or something, go work in the media. Why do you need it at this point with the kind of money that he's got?
Yeah, I mean, at the very least, I think he has. It is now very clear, hopefully to him, that college is his calling and not the professionals.
The record viewership for an NFL regular season game is a little more than 42 million for Cowboys Giants 3 years ago. What's your prediction for how many viewers are going to tune in for Cowboys Chiefs on Thanksgiving Day?
42.1 million. No, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to set a new record because you're talking about Dallas Cowboys. They got a little bit of momentum. It's Thanksgiving Day, so and it's the 4:30 slot, so everyone's going to be rolling after sitting on the couch
slot
after eating their big meal. It's that in between where you don't have to worry about the nightcap and maybe doing something with the family or the 1 o'clock slate where that a lot of times Thanksgiving meal is coming out. It's in that perfect slot where I think everyone will be watching. Then you throw in it's the Cowboys. You throw in it's the Chiefs who have made the Super Bowl however many years in a row. They obviously have a strong fan base right now as well. So I think because they're playing the Chiefs and they have the prime slot, it's a recipe for a new record.
I think John has the answer. I think it's going to be north of 50 million. I think that this is going to be a new record because, again, Thanksgiving Day, especially in that 4:30 slot, like that is the number. After the Super Bowl, that is typically the second most watched NFL game of the season. And the Cowboys have always been a ratings draw, obviously, and the Chiefs, because of their recent success and the fact that they've got Patrick Mahomes, then you throw in the Swift factor and everything else, like the Chiefs and the Chiefs might be above the Cowboys in terms of overall TV ratings right now. And you put the two of them together on top of the fact that it's Thanksgiving Day in that prime 4:30 slot. I think it is going to get a massive number. I think more than 50 million people are going to watch, and it's going to be a new record for a regular season NFL game for sure.
Let me ask you this, and I know we're getting ready to close up here.
30 seconds, quick.
Are you bought back in as a Dallas fan?
Every
After that Eagles,
I'm out, they pull me right back in. I am in. Like, how can I not be after they beat the Eagles Sunday? I probably got a false sense of security going into Thanksgiving Day. The fact that I feel good. I'm just setting myself up for disaster. All right, I will see you. Speaking of which, we will be watching that game together. Look forward to that. A lot of great stuff as always from the YouTube, and we'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.